All right. So I also have Erin's folder here, and the winding path. Her first semester here at Juniata included organic chem concepts, chem bio lab, CWS, like FYC, and Calc 1. Not what you would expect for a history POE, right? But by the end, when I had to write a letter of rec, I could say that I have only seen a handful of students who can match her love of history, sharp and creative mind, willingness to engage with thorny issues, capacity for hard work, and effervescent personality.
I need you to send me that. I need that to be like the thing that I like read back to myself pretty regularly.
I could send it to you, but I'd have to take my name off the bottom so you don't know who it's coming from.
True, okay.
All right. She had the ability to handle a lot of academic work. I quote, I remember asking her on several occasions, do you really want to sign up for 18 credits this semester? And take on extracurricular activities to boot. In one semester, Ms. Kirby worked as a student curator with the Museum of Art, co-designed an exhibition of materials from the college's archives, served as an officer in Skull Diggers, the Student History Club, worked as a student assistant in the Office of Academic Support Services, and played intramural softball. It was clear to me way back then, she graduated in 2000, that she could do it all. And it's apparent in staying in touch with Erin since she seems to be able to do it all. So Erin, it's all yours.
All right. Well, that's, again, a delightful introduction. So I did take a circuitous route. I entered Juniata as a chemistry major, mostly because my sister had been a chemistry major and it made a lot of sense, and I loved chemistry and I loved science and I loved math. And I still love all of those things. But when I got to Juniata and I took my first history class, I said, maybe I don't love it as much as I love history. And that kind of changed the course of my life. When I had been in 7th grade, I said I was going to be a curator. I don't think I even knew what that meant. But that became my goal at that point. So I went through and I did, and you might have to correct me, Dave, because I don't think I remember my POE. I think I was history
and museum
studies and art history.
Yeah.
So I did all of those things, and upon graduation, I went to graduate school. I went to the University of Delaware because they have an excellent material culture and museum studies program there. So I did a 2-year master's degree, got a job out of there at the Jewish Museum of Maryland in Baltimore, serving as a collections manager. I was in charge of photography and digitization of their collections. And I did that for a couple of years. The archivist left. I became the archivist, and I served as the archivist at the museum for about 3 years. In the interim, and this is a job that, by the way, I loved. I am not Jewish, so working at a Jewish institution, there was a huge learning curve, and it was one that was incredibly rewarding and really fun. And so I got to, I can't read Hebrew, but I can now tell you the difference between Hebrew and Yiddish just by looking at it, because there is a distinct difference in the writing style. So, I mean, there are just these little tricks that you learn along the way. And that attention to detail really kind of came through all of our research work at Juniata and through my graduate program as well. So that served me well long term. When I was at the museum, I was, as you can imagine, a relatively low paid museum worker. And I had gotten married and I had a kid, and I thought, wow, it cost me more to send my kid to daycare than I'm making. So I pivoted, and it was a pretty big pivot. I went from working in a museum of about 15 people, all with master's degrees, studying and focusing on a very particular exhibition and community cultural style, trying to broaden their reach, to sales. And I sold shelving, believe it or not, for 13 years. I worked for Space Saver Corporation, and we worked with museum and library clients. And so I became the sales rep for the Maryland sales territory, and I did that for 13 years. And I cried on my very first day. I said, what do I do now? And they said, here's a manual, call people. And I cried. And I sat in my car and I cried at lunch because there's no one to eat with, because sales reps don't go to an office. They're traveling. 13 years later, I left and I said, I've done everything I can do in sales. I've sold to Fortune 500s. I've sold multi-million-dollar projects. I have learned to speak with people that I never would have learned to talk to in any way, shape, or form. I would meet with the CEO in the morning and the gunnery officer at a military installation in the afternoon. And they had diverse needs, and I needed to learn how to think about those needs and articulate what our products were, and then create a proposal. So there was a ton of research and writing that went into that job, even though it seems like there wouldn't be. After 13 years, I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with sales. I'm done with this. I'm going to go back into nonprofits. I miss it. But when you're out of the museum and library world for 13 years, it's really hard to go back into museum and library work. There are things that change, the trends, the technologies in particular, and I just wasn't up to speed on them. While I was doing sales, I did get a master's in library science, because I thought, well, if I really hate this, I need something to fall back on. And so, you know, I had the second degree, but I thought, you know, these sales skills that I've developed over the last 13 years are actually really valuable to me. So I pivoted into nonprofit fundraising. So it combined that love of nonprofit work that is mission-based and the ability to kind of talk to people about what makes the mission critical and why that's important. So I went to a performing arts center here I live in York, Pennsylvania. So if any of you from York, what up? So I went to the Appel Center for the Performing Arts in November of 2019. And in March, the world died, and so did my job. So it's really hard to do performing arts when you're not allowed to perform. So, you know, I was unemployed for the first time in my life, and it's terrifying. But fortunately, I had a set of skills that I developed over the course of the previous 19, 20 years. And a job became available at York College in fundraising. And so now I am a corporate gifts officer at York College of Pennsylvania, doing fundraising for academic programs, and all of the things that I loved about Juniata. I'm now able to go out and ask people for the money to support those programs. And it would not be what you would say is a direct path from a history degree to a fundraising higher education degree, but it's oddly one that worked for me. And so, yeah, I think that's my very, very strange story.
Was there something you, Austin wished he had taken some accounting courses? Was there some course or experience that you, Jamie talked about study abroad. Was there something that you wish you had taken that current students might file away and think about?
You know, that's really interesting. I actually have given that a lot of thought over the years, because I have a daughter who's now looking at colleges. So we're talking a lot about this in our house. And I think because I entered as this science major, I took stats classes and business classes. I kind of took all of that because I'm just kind of weird like that. And I was the person that Dave very regularly had to say to me, are you sure you want to take 18 credits and audit 2 more? And I said, sure, why not? That's just, so I don't, coursework wise, I don't regret anything that I took, and I don't feel like I really missed out on anything coursework wise. I will say the study abroad was the one thing that I didn't do because my mother was ill during my college career. I couldn't leave for 6 months or a year and not be able to get home. So I didn't take advantage of that. And And while I don't regret the decision because it was absolutely the right one, I do regret the loss of that experience. And so travel is something that my family and I do very frequently. We enjoy that a lot. And I think part of it is because I know I missed out on that. And you're only 20 once. And in some ways that's great. And in some ways that's awful, because the freedom you have as a 20 or a 21-year-old is really remarkable. And so taking advantage of those programs that exist, it's so eye-opening in so many different ways that I think the out of classroom learning that you get through a study abroad program is so much more valuable than any in-class learning that you would get on the same experience. So I didn't do it. I regret it. I'm glad that Jamie had the opportunity to do that. I hope all of you have the opportunity to do that. I know it's not cheap, and there's always financial concerns that creep into those types of decisions as well. But I think if given the opportunity to do anything, it would be travel.
Okay. Well, great. Keeping an eye on the clock. Austin, could you maybe return to the seat?